Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome to the Cosmic Busker. My name is Bobby Codey. This video is Jesus used marijuana or cannabis and the connection to the divine feminine. Now for those of you who are religious Christian, you may think that this is an attack on Jesus. No, by no stretch of the imagination. For me personally, Jesus is my role model. I may not always be willing to turn the other cheek, but in just about every other respect, Jesus has been a role model for me. And I do and have smoked marijuana for quite a bit of time, not regularly, but I do enjoy smoking. And so this is an attack on him, and as my role model, I always intuitively knew that Jesus used marijuana. And sure enough, about a few months ago, I found an article from an archaeological expedition that absolutely 100% proved it in my eyes that Jesus did use marijuana in his ministry. And we're going to take a look at that article and another article, and I'm going to talk about why it proves it. And I'm also going to show how all this ties in with the divine feminine. And we're going to talk a little bit about history and connections with the Hebrews and other groups, and how this all ties together with the divine feminine and how the divine feminine was suppressed. I've written a book long time ago, 2003, 2004, about the divine feminine, that was thematically oriented towards the divine feminine. Matter of fact, I'll share a card right up there now, a link to a video that I've done about that book. The book is called The New Lane by me, Robert H. Codey Jr. That's my full name. I use my full name for the books, and I use my shortened name, Bobby Codey, for my music. So The New Lane is that book, and I also have another book. It's called Mommy Issues. That's free. That showed up in that card. I'll also post a link down below. So if you'd like, you can download that book for free. It's a PDF. It's a full-length novel, 300 pages. It actually talks about how I got into the situation where I am right now, where I cannot, no matter how much money I make, I can't afford an apartment, and I am probably homeless for life. Having said that, if you want to help me out, my PayPal is below. It'd be much appreciated. I haven't been able to see my kids in 2 years. I've got all the paperwork done to see my kids. It's $50 to file the paperwork. I got no income. So if you want to help me out, PayPal's down below. But for right now, let's take a look at this article, and I'll talk about how this ties in with Jesus having used marijuana in his ministry. I also want to talk about, marijuana is a healing herb. It's already been shown to heal cancer and other illnesses and diseases that people have. Myself as well. I want to save my life literally. I was in a coma and going to die, and the fact that I had THC in my system is the reason I'm able to talk to you. I should have possibly died and maybe had permanent brain damage. I'm going to do another video on that in the future called Marijuana Saved My Life. But that's why I know that Jesus used it in his ministry, because it's a healing herb. And evidence is overwhelming. We're going to go to that right now. So let's go to that first article. It's regarding an archaeological expedition and what they uncovered. We'll go to that right now, and then we'll come back. The headline for the news article reads, Archaeologists identify traces of burnt cannabis in ancient Jewish shrine. Okay, so there's a Jewish temple. They found burnt cannabis. Take a look. Article was on SmithsonianMag.com, written by Alex Fox. The date is June 4th, 2020 of the article. Real quick, picture of the shrine here. This one altar on the left is the one they found frankincense. And this one right here on the right, this shrine or altar, they found burnt cannabis on it. So let's read the article and see what they have to say. Roughly 35 miles south of Jerusalem, in an archaeological site in the Negev Desert in Israel, known as Tel Arad, archaeologists excavating an ancient Jewish shrine have found traces of burnt cannabis and frankincense on a pair of limestone altars. A new research published last week in the journal Tel Aviv provides the first evidence that the mind-altering substance, marijuana or cannabis, was part of religious life in the ancient kingdom of Judah. Tel Arad contains the remains of a Canaanite site from the 3rd millennium BC, as well as Israelite fortresses from between the 10th and 6th centuries BC. Excavations in the 1960s identified a pair of citadels that guarded the southern border of the Kingdom of Judah during that time, as well as a well-preserved shrine dated to roughly 760 to 715 BC, according to a statement from the researchers. It was within this shrine that the 2 stone altars were discovered, with the remains of what appeared to be burnt plant material. The stone altars were found at the entrance of the shrine's inner sanctum, known as the Holy of Holies. The chemical analysis conducted by researchers helps provide a window into the rituals and spiritual life of the Judahites, or the Israelites. This is the first time that cannabis has been identified in the ancient Near East. Its use in the shrine must have played a central role in the cultic rituals performed there, says Aran Ari, an archaeologist with the Israel Museum in Jerusalem and lead author of the new research. The shrine is also contemporaneous with the first Jewish temple in Jerusalem, suggesting similar ritual practices may have taken place at the biblical house of worship, per Ilan Ben Zion for the AP, or Associated Press. The shrine at Tel Arad also bears a close physical resemblance to the first temple. Now, I think this first temple is actually also where the Ark of the Covenant is located. People may be familiar with that from Raiders of the Lost Ark, the movie. We'll continue. Let's see. New research applied modern chemical analysis techniques to the residues on each of the 2 altars. The smaller of the 2 altars was found to have a mixture of animal dung and cannabis that contained sufficient THC, psychoactive compound in cannabis, to get those breathing in its fumes high. So they burnt it in the shrine, and everybody in there got high. That was part of why they burnt it. Besides the potential incorporation of altered states of consciousness to worship, the findings also have implications for the understanding of trade routes at the time. Ari tells Science News that the cannabis was likely grown somewhere in southeastern Russia or China, and Robert Spengler, an archaeobotanist at the Max Planck Institute who was not involved in the study, suggests information about cannabis use spread west from Asia, along what's called the Silk Road. All right, so there we have indisputable archaeological evidence that in the previous times, previous to the existence of Jesus, this was, 700 years before Jesus lived, that in the old temples in Judaism, well, it's pre-Reformation, they used to burn cannabis, and they utilized it in their ceremonies in the shrine or in the temple. So now you may say, well, what does that have to do with Jesus? Well, we know Jesus was Jewish, and we're going to get to that, and I'm going to show you right now. We're going to lead up to that. But first, I want to show you how they utilized it. They burnt it in the temples, great. So what else? Well, we're going to go to the Old Testament in Exodus, and we're going to take a look at what Exodus says regarding Moses and God's commandments to Moses. We'll go to that right now. We're going to take a look at Old Testament, Exodus. This is 30-3 22 to 35, I believe it is. You can look it up. States, "Then the Lord said to Moses, take the following fine spices, 500 shekels of liquid myrrh, half as much of fragrant cinnamon, 250 shekels of Bosm." Bosm is cannabis or marijuana. Now there are different translations of this. Somewhere it'll say calamus, which is a completely different thing. But given the fact that we've already found cannabis in the temples, as we showed in the article, there's no doubt that Bosm is the proper translation. And Bosm is cannabis. You can see the linguistic similarity. Bosm is cannabis. So we'll continue because part of this is important. 500 shekels of cassia, all according to the sanctuary shekel, and a kind of olive oil. Make these into a sacred anointing oil, a fragrant blend, the work of a perfumer. It will be the sacred anointing oil. Very important, okay? It's the sacred anointing oil. I want to continue. Then use it to anoint the tent of the meeting, the ark of the testimony. I believe the ark of the testimony is the ark of the covenant. Same thing. The table and all its articles, the lampstand and its accessories, the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering. As we showed before, in the temple, there was a burnt offering. They burnt it on there. And all its utensils in the basin with its stand, as again we saw in the picture. You shall consecrate them so they will be most holy, and whatever touches them will be holy. Now here's an important point that I want you to see. Anoint Aaron and his sons and consecrate them so they may serve me as priests. The tribe of Aaron was the priestly tribe, and it's my understanding that they were the only priestly tribe. It was the tribe of Aaron were supposed to be the ones who were the priests. Say to the Israelites, this is to be my sacred anointing oil for the generations to come. Do not pour it on men's bodies, and do not make any oil with the same formula. It is sacred, and you will consider it sacred. Whoever makes perfume like it, and whoever puts it on anyone other than a priest, or from the line of Aaron, must be cut off from his people. And I've talked about this in a previous video, that to be cut off from your people, that's a death sentence, because we as a people, we are depending on civilization. When you cut somebody off from the people, they have no way to live, and it's almost like a death sentence. So here we have them saying this is a sacred oil, only the priests can use this. Nobody else. Anybody else tries to use it, put it on anybody's body other than a priest, death sentence. They're cut off from people. They're exiled. Get rid of them. Okay? This is all very important towards what we're leading up to. All right. So far we've shown that in the temples they burnt cannabis. We've shown that the ingredients for the anointing oil was cannabis, the main ingredient. And we also showed how, according to Exodus, only the priestly caste were allowed to be anointed with this oil. Only the line of Aaron, which was the priestly family, the priestly line, was allowed to be anointed with this oil. So now we'll jump over to the New Testament. And this is 5:14. I'll put it up here right now so you can read it. It says in James 5:14, "Is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms. Is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church, and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. Okay. Now I point this out because there are other biblical verses as well, and you can read the Bible, you see it in the New Testament frequently. Jesus used the anointing oil to heal the sick. And we've shown that in that anointing oil, the main ingredient was cannabis or marijuana. Jesus was using a mixture with marijuana to heal the sick. And we know that marijuana heals cancer, it heals skin conditions, it can heal eye conditions, people who have cataracts and such. So everything comes together at this point. Now, what's important also, we showed how, according to the Old Testament, only the priestly caste was able to use the anointing oil. They said, oh, don't put it on the common man. If anybody puts it on a common man, they're exiled. They're kicked out of the community. That's what Jesus was doing. He was healing the sick with this anointing oil. He was going against Jewish law. That's why the Jewish priests were angry at him and why ultimately led to his crucifixion. He was violating Jewish law, taking this anointing oil that, according to the Old Testament in Exodus, was only supposed to be used on the priestly caste, and he was using it on the poor and the common man. So I said, Ultimately, they ended up crucifying him. All right, so now what I want to do is move on to all of this connection with the divine feminine as well. This is another article I want to take a look at. And as we go and take a look at this article and read through select sections of this article, I'll make some comments on it historically and how this connects historically with the divine feminine and give a broader picture and elucidate on the history of this. So we'll go to that right now. All right, so finally what I want to do here is I want to take a look at this article. I'll link to it down below. Cannabis in the Old Testament is the article. It's on, I think, cannabisculture.com is the website. You can read it down below if you're interested in the full article. I'm going to go through select sections of this article that ties in with the divine feminine, and I'm going to relate this to Jesus as well. So it says, closer to Moses' own time, cannabis was used as a topical hallucinogen by the ancient worshippers of Asherah, the queen of heaven. Asherah has also been referred to as the Hebrew goddess. The shamanistic Asherah priestesses of pre-Reformation Jerusalem mixed cannabis resins with those from myrrh, balsam, frankincense, and perfumes, and then anointed their skins with the mixture as well as burned it. I just want to point out where they talk about here with pre-Reformation Jerusalem. It's my understanding that they blame the fall of Jerusalem on the fact that they were worshiping this feminine goddess. You know, we always said, you shall have no gods or goddesses before me. And here they're worshiping Asherah, this Hebrew goddess, and so they blamed the worship of this goddess on why Israel fell. And that's why you don't see it in current Judaism, why it's post-Reformation. I think that the Reformation, part of that was a dropping of the divine feminine from Judaism. So we'll continue. Lacking the invention of pipes, it is the practice of some of ancient peoples to burn cannabis and other herbs in tents so that more smoke could be captured and inhaled. In the last installment of this column, we discussed such a group, the ancient Scythians. The Scythians were a nomadic people who traveled and settled extensively throughout Europe, the Mediterranean, Central Asia, and Russia. They burned cannabis inside small tents and inhaled the fumes for ritualistic and recreational purposes. Now, these Scythians they're called essentially the horse lords. They existed in what's like they say, Europe, Mediterranean, Central Asia, and Russia. These were some of the most civilized and successful people and civilizations of the time. Very famous, and it's strange that we don't have a lot of knowledge of them now, because they were the predominant peoples of the time. They really were. And if you do research on the Yamnaya essentially are a group of peoples who, around 3000 BC, rode horses into Europe and became essentially the European peoples for the most part. You can say the Scythians are the late version of the Yamnaya. The Yamnaya were like 3000 BC, 2000 BC. Well, this is around 700 BC, 500 BC, this area. This is just a later version of the Yamnaya, the Scythians, okay? So let's take a look more at what this has to say. Given that the Scythians and Israelites were involved in a trade of goods and knowledge, it is not surprising to find the similar technique of using tents to retain smoke. Bennett commented on the often overlooked connection between these two groups. And we'll see this in a moment. Watch this. I'm going to move this up so we can read this a little further. The Scythians participated... Get rid of that. The Scythians participated in both trade and wars alongside the ancient Semites for at least one millennium, 1,000 years before Herodotus encountered them in the 5th century BC. The reason for the confusion and relative obscurity of the role played by the Scythians in world history is the fact that they were known to Greeks as Scythians, but to Semites as Ashkenaz. Right? And what do they call European Jews? Ashkenazi Jews. So you had a strong relationship and commingling, it seems, between the ancient Hebrews and these Scythians, which again would have meant intermarrying and intermingling. And what we have today, almost all of the Jews in America are Ashkenazi Jews. They're from the Scythians, from the mixing with the Scythians. And here we say at the bottom, the earliest reference to the Ashkenaz people appears in the Bible in Genesis 10:3, where Ashkenaz, their progenitor, is named the son of Gomer, the great-grandson of Noah. Okay, so we'll continue a little bit with this. There we go. Second appearance of cannabis. The next biblical account of cannabis comes under the name Kaneh, Bosm, Cannabis, and appears in relation to King Solomon. In Solomon's Song of Songs, one of the most beautifully written pieces in the Old Testament, Solomon mentions Kaneh in describing his bride. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride, come with me from Lebanon. Descend from the crest of Ammon, from the top of Senir, the summit of Hermon. How delightful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much more pleasing is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your ointment than any spice. The fragrance of your garments is like that of Lebanon. Your plants are an orchard of pomegranates, with choice fruits, with henna and nard and saffron, kenna and cinnamon, with every kind of incense tree. This is Song of Songs 4:8-14. So here now we have Solomon and the Queen of Heaven, or Ashira, also known as Astarte. In the temple and the lodge by Bijant and Leah, the authors state that Solomon's Song of Songs is a hymn and invocation to the Phoenician mother goddess Astarte. Astarte was known as Queen of Heaven, Star of the Sea, and Stella Maris. Authors show us that Astarte was conventionally worshipped on mountains and hilltops, and then point to a quote from 1 Kings 3:3. Solomon loved Yahweh. He followed the precepts of David his father, except that he offered sacrifice and incense on the high places. The high places, Astarte. In 1 Kings 11:4-5 offers an even more explicit example of Solomon's ties to Astarte. When Solomon grew old, his wives swayed his heart to other gods. This is what I talked about. Other gods. And his heart was not wholly with Yahweh, his God, as his father David's had been. Solomon became a follower of Astarte, the goddess of the Sidonians. Okay? It looks like that's it. So, now here's where I'm going with this. We already showed that Jesus used the anointing of the oils to heal people. And we've seen how this is associated with the divine feminine. Well, what do we call cannabis nowadays in English via the Spanish language? Marijuana or Mary Jane. Mary Jane. A feminine name. And Mary, again, what, is there a goddess named Mary? Yeah, Mother Mary. Jesus' mother. Not only that, but many people allege, in the New Testament there's Mary Magdalene. And people allege that this was Jesus' wife as well. So once again, what it appears you have is a suppression of the divine feminine. The not only suppression of the fact that Mary Magdalene was Jesus' wife, but we have a suppression of a healing herb, marijuana or Mary Jane. It all ties in together. Got it? So I'm going to end this video now. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. If you can help out, my PayPal is down below. It's a bit, I think I'm going to be working on my music for the next few days, so there may not be any new videos coming up soon. Hopefully I'll do another video maybe sometime in a couple days, maybe 3 or 4 days from now. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate it.